When Paul died in 2013, the world mourned the movie star, but his closest friends and family were forced to confront something far more personal, something Paul had kept almost completely hidden from the public. They had to open the doors to his private garage, a garage that very few people knew existed, a garage that Paul protected more fiercely than anything else he owned, a garage that would reveal a side of him the world had never seen before. Because once those doors slid open, what they found inside didn't just surprise them, it stunned them. To the world, Paul Walker was Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop with a good heart and a heavy right foot, but behind that Hollywood smile was a man with a passion that went far deeper than acting. Cars weren't props, they weren't clout, they weren't trophies. They were his peace, they were his escape, they were the language he understood better than anything else. Paul rarely posted his cars, he didn't show them off, he didn't brag about his collection, he didn't turn his garage into content. In fact, he avoided attention at all costs, because to him, cars weren't about the spotlight. They were about connection, to engine, to road, to soul, and that truth became painfully clear the moment his family stepped inside. The garage was massive, a quiet industrial space tucked away in Valencia, California. Not flashy, not decorated, not designed for public viewing. It looked more like a workshop than a showroom, and inside it, more than 30 ultra-rare machines sat packed tightly together, some covered by tarps, some pushed into corners, some resting silently like sleeping giants. But these weren't ordinary collector cars. Some were so rare that even seasoned enthusiasts had never seen them in person. Some weren't registered, some weren't legal, some weren't even supposed to exist in the US at all. It was immediately clear this wasn't a celebrity fashion accessory. This was the real-life garage of a man obsessed with performance, purity, and engineering. And as the team walked deeper, the weight of what they were seeing hit harder. There was a 1995 BMW M3 lightweight, already rare enough, with just around 125 units made. Paul had 5 of them, each one a little different, each one tuned, modified, or preserved with intention. Near it sat a Saleen S7, a beast of an American hypercar, a machine with more character than comfort, built for raw speed and not much else. There were 4 GTs lined up like fighter jets, Porsche 911 turbos in immaculate condition, a super turbo that felt like a tribute to his Fast and Furious legacy, and then the crown jewels, his Skyline GTR collection, import legends, R32S and R34S fully built with racing components, detailed tuning notes stuffed in glove boxes, scribbled reminders about boost levels, gear ratios, fuel trims. One R34 had its own aura, rumored to be tied to the Fast and Furious franchise, kept hidden from everyone. It didn't feel like a garage, it felt like walking through Paul's mind, because every car told a story, not a story of wealth, but a story of passion, of late nights, of burned knuckles, of test drives at midnight, of someone who treated machines like friends. But then the confusion started. None of this seemed simple. Many of the cars weren't registered under Paul's name. Some were under Always Evolving, the motorsports shop Paul co-owned with Roger Rodas, his close friend who died alongside him. The company wasn't just a business, it was a kind of shield, a way to protect high-value vehicles, manage risky imports, and keep Paul's personal life private. But after his death, this created a legal nightmare. Who owned what? Which cars were his? Which belonged to the company? Which were shared? Which were mid-project? Which were investments? And which were just Paul being Paul? Titles didn't match. Insurance papers were missing. Some cars were mid-compliance, half torn apart to meet US regulation. Some had no plates at all. Others had paperwork so complicated even lawyers couldn't decipher it at first. But the biggest shock came from a group of cars that were technically illegal. Paul had several Japanese domestic market cars, legendary machines like the R34 Skyline, imported through loopholes like show and display. These laws let a car enter the US, but with strict rules. Limited driving, non-standard registration, almost impossible insurance. Some cars might not have passed US emissions or crash tests. Some might have been brought in quietly, discreetly through back channels. Some might have been in the middle of federal compliance work. But Paul didn't care about any of that. He cared that the car felt right, that it felt alive, that it was built the way engineers intended, with no compromise. And then inside the cars, they found something that brought everyone to a halt. Handwritten notes, scraps of paper, sticky notes, receipts with scribbles on the back, his handwriting, his thoughts, his emotions. One note inside a Skyline read, "Feels like flying, smooth, angry, alive." Inside an M3, lightweight, cleanest one left, don't ever flip it. Inside another car, instructions for a future track day, suspension notes, tire wear notes, preferred RPM shift points, and then the note that crushed everyone. "This one's for Meadow. She'll drive it one day." A personal gift, a father's dream, a promise he never got to fulfill. But the emotional hits didn't stop there. Some cars were unfinished, disassembled mid-restoration, wiring half done, engines pulled apart, tools still sitting nearby, exactly where Paul had left them before his final day. One Datsun 240Z was believed to be his next personal project. Another muscle car was being restored for a friend. These weren't side hobbies. These were future chapters of his life that had simply stopped. And then something even more surprising appeared. Cars tagged for charity, sticky notes with RO or Charity Rel. Paul had planned to auction some of his most valuable cars to fund Reach Out Worldwide, his disaster relief organization. Quiet donations, quiet planning, quiet generosity. He wasn't waiting for a camera crew, he wasn't making an announcement, he wasn't doing it for likes, he was doing it because he cared. But when the garage was appraised, the number was staggering, more than $18 million. And with that kind of value came the thing Paul would have hated the most: lawsuits, disputes, claims, creditors, legal battles. In 2020, 21 of his cars were sold at auction for more than $2 million combined, but many of the most meaningful cars, the ones that truly told Paul's story, remained hidden, protected by family, kept away from cameras, exactly how Paul wanted them. But the legal battles weren't the hardest part. The hardest part was emotional. For Meadow, who was just 15 when her father died, this wasn't a collection. It was her father's life preserved in metal and rubber, his handwriting, his tools, his playlists still saved in the radios, his dreams frozen mid-build. Friends cried when they entered. Some froze, some felt guilt, regret, heartbreak, because walking through the garage felt like walking through all the things Paul never got to finish. In the end, what they found wasn't shocking because it was expensive. It wasn't shocking because it was rare. It wasn't shocking because of the illegal imports or the lawsuits. It was shocking because Paul Walker never intended for anyone to see this. His garage wasn't built for fame. It wasn't built for celebrity car tours. It wasn't built for Instagram or YouTube or headlines. It was built for him. It was the place where he was most himself, where his passion lived, where his peace lived, where his true identity lived. And today, that's his real legacy. Paul Walker wasn't a movie star who happened to love cars. He was a pure car guy who happened to become a movie star. And behind those garage doors, that truth was finally revealed.